China just broke ranks with NASA and issued an official warning about March 8th. And what they revealed about this mysterious object has completely shattered the narrative NASA's been feeding us for months. This wasn't a diplomatic statement or scientific debate. China's space program just publicly declared that Atlas is exhibiting capabilities NASA keeps denying exist. They released tracking data showing impossible maneuvers. They shared observations of technology that shouldn't be there, and they warned the world to prepare for something NASA insists won't happen. But here's what makes this absolutely explosive. Within hours, Russia backed China's warning, then India, then Japan. One by one, space agencies across the globe started supporting China's assessment, while NASA maintains complete radio silence. Either the entire international space community is participating in mass delusion about Atlas's capabilities, or NASA has been lying to us. And based on what China just revealed, it's becoming very clear which scenario is true. Before we expose what China discovered that NASA won't acknowledge, hit that subscribe button and drop a like, because what you're about to learn about Atlas changes everything. The geopolitical space race just revealed something both superpowers have been tracking. The difference is China decided the world deserves to know, NASA decided we should stay in the dark. Let's get straight to what China observed about Atlas, because their findings are absolutely mind-blowing and completely contradict everything NASA has told us. China's Deep Space Tracking Network captured Atlas performing maneuvers that should be physically impossible for a natural object. Over a 48-hour observation period, Atlas decelerated by 5,000 miles per hour, held a stable position in space for 6 hours, then accelerated back to its original velocity. Think about what that means. Comets don't hit the brakes. Asteroids don't pause mid-flight. Natural space objects follow predictable paths determined by gravity and momentum. Atlas is actively controlling its movement like a spacecraft navigating through our solar system. A propulsion expert analyzing China's data made it simple. What they documented is powered flight. No question about it. The acceleration profiles, the velocity changes, the ability to maintain station keeping. All of this requires engines, advanced engines using technology we can barely comprehend. But the propulsion capabilities are just the beginning. China's radio telescope arrays detected something even more extraordinary about Atlas. It's broadcasting complex signals that show unmistakable signs of intelligent design. The transmissions aren't random electromagnetic noise. They're structured, organized, and using modulation techniques that require sophisticated technology. China detected frequency hopping, where signals rapidly switch between different frequencies to avoid interference or detection. That's a military communication technique. Natural phenomena don't do that. The signals also contain what appears to be error correction codes, mathematical structures designed to ensure data integrity when transmitting through noisy space. Again, that's advanced technology, not natural radio emissions. One radio astronomer who reviewed China's signal analysis described it as shocking. These transmissions show engineering principles. Someone or something designed a communication system, built it, and is actively using it. Atlas isn't just an object drifting through space. It's a platform transmitting information with clear purpose. China's space-based telescopes also captured high-resolution images of Atlas that reveal surface features NASA's images somehow never showed clearly. The Chinese imagery shows geometric patterns on Atlas's surface, straight lines, right angles, symmetrical arrangements that look strikingly artificial. Natural space objects are chaotic. Asteroids and comets have irregular, random surface features formed by collisions, thermal stress, and gravitational forces. Atlas shows organized structures that suggest deliberate construction. Now, here's where things get really interesting and really suspicious. NASA has been observing Atlas with equipment just as sophisticated as China's. So why are their conclusions so dramatically different? For months, NASA has characterized Atlas as an unusual but ultimately natural interstellar object. Yes, it has some strange properties, they admit, but nothing that definitively proves artificial origin. just an interesting comet with some peculiar features worth studying. But China's data shows propulsion, structured communications, and geometric surface features. These aren't subtle anomalies that could be interpreted different ways. These are clear signatures of technology. Either China's equipment is severely malfunctioning in very specific ways, or NASA has been selectively releasing data that downplays Atlas's true nature. Multiple sources suggest NASA detected the same propulsion signatures China observed but chose not to make them public. Internal communications allegedly describe trajectory anomalies requiring further analysis before public disclosure, which is bureaucratic language for "we found something alarming that we're not ready to share." A former NASA scientist speaking anonymously described the agency's approach. There's enormous pressure to avoid making extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence. But sometimes that caution becomes denial. When you see propulsion signatures, but you're terrified of saying this might be alien technology, you end up downplaying obvious evidence to avoid controversy. NASA's public statements about Atlas have been carefully worded to technically avoid lying while misleading the public about what they've actually observed. They say things like currently no evidence of artificial propulsion, when what they mean is we haven't officially classified the anomalies as propulsion, even though that's clearly what they look like. The electromagnetic emissions are another example. NASA acknowledges detecting unusual radio signatures from Atlas, but characterizes them as poorly understood natural phenomena. Meanwhile, China's analysis shows clear communication protocols. NASA isn't saying China is wrong. They're just not confirming it publicly. An aerospace analyst described the discrepancy. NASA and China are looking at the same object with comparable technology. They're seeing the same data, but NASA is interpreting it through the most conservative possible lens because they're terrified of the implications. China apparently decided the truth matters more than avoiding panic. The image discrepancy is particularly damning. NASA has released numerous photos of Atlas, but they're always at resolutions or angles that make surface details unclear. China's images, taken with similar equipment, show those geometric patterns clearly. Either NASA's imaging team is remarkably incompetent or they're deliberately releasing images that hide Atlas's artificial features. Let's focus on what Atlas itself has been doing, because its behavior tells us far more than any government statement or press release ever could. The propulsion maneuvers China documented aren't random. Atlas has been making systematic course corrections that suggest deliberate navigation towards specific objectives. It's not just drifting through the solar system. It's visiting locations with apparent purpose. Atlas performed detailed surveys of Mars, deploying objects to the surface and conducting intensive scans of specific regions. That's reconnaissance behavior. It methodically mapped areas of scientific or strategic interest, gathered data, and moved on. Now, Atlas is maneuvering toward Earth using the same systematic approach. It's not on a simple flyby trajectory. It's adjusting course repeatedly, apparently fine-tuning its approach to achieve optimal positioning relative to our planet. An orbital mechanics specialist explained what the trajectory shows. Atlas is navigating like a spacecraft approaching a destination. It's making the kinds of course corrections you'd make if you wanted to arrive at specific coordinates at a specific time. This isn't ballistic flight. This is piloted navigation. The electromagnetic transmissions have also evolved throughout Atlas's journey through our solar system. Early transmissions were simple, almost like test broadcasts to verify systems were functioning. As Atlas approached inner solar system objects, the transmissions became more complex and targeted. When Atlas was near Mars, transmission intensity increased dramatically and appeared directed toward the Martian surface, possibly communicating with the objects it deployed there. Now, as Atlas approaches Earth, transmissions are intensifying again and seem directed toward our planet. A communications specialist analyzing the signal patterns described them as progressive. Early signals were like testing. Is this working? Current transmissions are structured, purposeful, and appear designed to convey specific information. Whatever Atlas is, it's trying to communicate, and getting more sophisticated in its attempts. Atlas has also demonstrated an ability to respond to its environment. When it passed through a region of space with higher than normal micrometeorite density, it adjusted its orientation to minimize impact risk on critical surfaces. That's active threat response, not passive drifting. When Jupiter's gravity began affecting Atlas's trajectory, it compensated with thrust adjustments that maintained its intended course. Natural objects don't compensate for gravitational perturbations. They just get pulled along. Atlas actively counters forces that would alter its path. Perhaps most tellingly, Atlas appears to be studying us as much as we're studying it. Its positioning during Mars observation provided optimal lines of sight to Earth. Its current trajectory will bring it close enough to Earth for detailed observation, while remaining outside easy reach of our defensive capabilities. That positioning is tactically smart, close enough to gather intelligence, far enough to maintain safety margins. It's exactly how you'd approach an unknown planet if you wanted to study it without immediate risk of confrontation. China's warning triggered a cascade of responses from space agencies worldwide. And the pattern of those responses reveals that China isn't alone in what they've observed about Atlas. Russia's space agency released a statement within hours of China's announcement. Recent observations of Object 3I/ by Russian space surveillance networks confirm sophisticated maneuvering capabilities and structured electromagnetic emissions. We support international coordination for unprecedented contact protocols. That's remarkably similar language to China's warning. Russia is confirming they've seen the same propulsion and communications that China described. Two major space powers with independent tracking capabilities are now on record saying Atlas is artificial. India's space program followed with their own statement acknowledging anomalous properties in Atlas that suggest advanced technological origins. Japan's space agency noted trajectory characteristics inconsistent with natural phenomena. The European Space Agency convened emergency meetings with member nations to discuss unprecedented scenarios. One by one, international space agencies are breaking away from NASA's conservative narrative and acknowledging what they're actually seeing. Atlas behaves like artificial technology, not a natural object. But notice who isn't saying anything: NASA and its closest allies. The United States Space Agency maintains complete silence. So does the UK Space Agency. Canada's space program has made no statement. The Anglo-American space establishment is conspicuously quiet while the rest of the world raises alarms. A geopolitical analyst described the divide. This is shaping up as the most significant international science crisis in history. One bloc of nations is warning about artificial interstellar technology approaching Earth. Another bloc is saying nothing, hoping the situation resolves without public panic. That divide reveals deep disagreement about transparency versus control. Behind closed doors, diplomatic tensions are escalating. Countries that have acknowledged Atlas's artificial nature. The unfolding situation surrounding Atlas has reached a point where global concern and demand for a coordinated international response are growing louder by the day. Nations that remain silent are being accused of withholding critical information that affects all of humanity. In response, the United Nations has scheduled emergency sessions of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. Multiple countries have demanded that the United States share all Atlas tracking data and explain why NASA's assessment differs so dramatically from international observations. A UN diplomatic source described the mood as one of real anger. Nations feel betrayed that the U.S. has been downplaying Atlas's significance while they themselves have been observing the same alarming phenomena that China described. The trust that once enabled international space cooperation is being severely damaged. NASA's refusal to respond to China's warning or acknowledge the growing international consensus about Atlas's artificial nature reveals a lot about their decision-making process, and none of it reflects well on the agency's commitment to transparency. One factor driving NASA's silence is institutional inertia. The agency has spent months characterizing Atlas as a natural, if unusual, object. Reversing that stance now would mean admitting they were wrong, or worse, that they have been deliberately misleading the public. Government agencies notoriously hate admitting error, especially on issues of such significance. There is also genuine fear of public reaction. NASA's leadership reportedly believes that confirming Atlas is an artificial technology could trigger panic, economic disruption, religious upheaval, and social chaos. Whether that fear is justified or simply patronizing, it drives their information control strategy. A former NASA administrator explained the thinking behind this approach. The assumption is that the public can't handle existential paradigm shifts. If we confirm alien technology is approaching Earth, markets crash, religions splinter, and people stop going to work. Because what's the point anymore? Leadership sees it as their responsibility to prevent chaos by controlling information flow. But that paternalistic approach comes with severe consequences. By staying silent while other nations issue warnings about Atlas, NASA is forfeiting American leadership on what may be the most important issue in human history. Other countries are now shaping the narrative, while NASA appears either incompetent or dishonest. There are also likely military and intelligence considerations at play. If Atlas represents advanced technology, studying it could provide enormous strategic advantages. The nation that first understands Atlas's propulsion systems, communication methods, or construction design could gain civilization-altering technological breakthroughs. NASA's silence might, therefore, be coordinated with military space programs that want time to analyze Atlas without international interference. If the U.S. can unlock Atlas's technology before sharing it globally, that could extend American technological dominance for generations. As one defense analyst put it, from a national security perspective, Atlas is the ultimate intelligence goldmine. You don't share intelligence about game-changing technology with potential adversaries until you've exploited it yourself. NASA's silence might therefore be serving military interests rather than scientific ones. Yet the most cynical interpretation is that NASA simply doesn't know how to backtrack from months of minimizing Atlas's significance without destroying their credibility. They've dug themselves into a narrative hole where admitting the truth would mean confessing they misled the public, possibly deliberately, about the most important discovery in human history. Setting aside the geopolitical drama, what Atlas itself is currently doing is far more urgent. Tracking data from multiple international sources indicates that Atlas is now approximately 140 million miles from Earth in closing. Its trajectory isn't a simple approach curve, but a carefully calculated path bringing it into Earth's orbital neighborhood at what appears to be a deliberately chosen arrival time. Atlas continues to make periodic thrust adjustments, fine-tuning its approach. Each maneuver is small but extremely precise, suggesting that whatever controls the object has clear objectives and is methodically achieving them. Even more concerning are the electromagnetic transmissions, which have intensified dramatically over the past 2 weeks. What began as occasional broadcasts are now nearly continuous emissions across multiple frequency bands. Whatever Atlas wants to communicate, it's trying harder to get the message across. A signals intelligence specialist analyzing the transmissions described their evolution. Early signals were exploratory, like testing different frequencies to see what works. The current transmissions are focused, powerful, and appear directed specifically toward Earth. It's like watching someone who's been trying to get your attention from across a crowded room finally stand up and wave directly at you. Some transmissions now include what appear to be visual data patterns that, when decoded, might represent images or diagrams. Multiple research teams are working independently to decode these transmissions, and preliminary results suggest that Atlas is sending information about itself, its specifications, capabilities, and possibly even its intentions. One decoded segment appears to show a star map, possibly indicating Atlas's point of origin. Another shows molecular diagrams that might describe its composition or the chemistry of life as it understands it. A third shows what could be a schematic of Atlas itself, revealing internal structures that no telescope has yet observed directly. But perhaps most significant are the countdown sequences embedded in recent transmissions. Multiple analysis teams have identified numerical patterns that decrease over time, suggesting Atlas is marking time until something specific occurs. Current estimates suggest the countdown will reach zero in approximately 4 to 6 weeks. What happens at zero? Nobody knows. Possibilities include Atlas reaching Earth's orbital distance, deploying additional objects, initiating direct communication attempts, or activating capabilities not yet demonstrated. The countdown is clear, its meaning is not. In addition, Atlas has begun releasing smaller objects, dozens of them, over the past week. These objects are spreading out from Atlas in systematic patterns, taking up positions that form a grid-like network extending millions of miles around the main object. They could be communication relays designed to transmit data across vast distances, sensor platforms gathering environmental information, or defensive systems positioning themselves to protect Atlas from potential hostile action. Whatever their purpose, Atlas is actively deploying assets in preparation for something imminent. All international tracking models now converge on the same timeline. Atlas will reach its closest approach to Earth in 4 to 6 weeks. But closest approach might be a misleading term. The data suggests Atlas isn't planning a flyby. Instead, it appears to be taking up a position approximately 3 to 4 million miles from Earth. Close enough for detailed observation and potential communication, yet far enough to remain outside the effective range of any defensive measures we could take. That distance is not random. It's strategically chosen. It's close enough to interact, but far enough to stay safe. Exactly what an advanced intelligence would do if it wanted to study us while minimizing risk, as one aerospace strategist explained. If you were approaching a planet with unknown capabilities and possibly hostile inhabitants, you want to be close enough to accomplish your objectives, but far enough that their weapons can't easily reach you. Atlas is positioning itself exactly where our threat capability drops off significantly. At that range, Atlas could deploy smaller probes that would reach Earth's atmosphere in days. It could conduct high-resolution surface scans, mapping the planet in extraordinary detail. It could attempt direct communication with governments, militaries, or even broadcast messages directly to the global population. Meanwhile, humanity would have almost no ability to affect Atlas. Our fastest spacecraft would take weeks to reach it, and our most powerful weapons would struggle to target it effectively at that distance. If Atlas's intentions are hostile, its positioning gives us very few good options. Yet hostility might not be its purpose. That same distance would be perfect for peaceful first contact, close enough to demonstrate capability, but far enough to avoid appearing threatening. It's a diplomatic stance, showing power while inviting dialogue. The countdown in Atlas's transmissions appears to coincide with its arrival at that optimal distance. Whatever Atlas has been planning throughout its journey through our solar system, whatever it has been preparing for and building toward, will apparently occur when that countdown reaches zero. China's warning now takes on new meaning. They're telling the world, prepare for something significant happening in 4 to 6 weeks. Whether that means first contact, observation, or something else entirely, Atlas is approaching a critical moment, and NASA's silence is becoming increasingly inexcusable. If China is correct, and the evidence strongly suggests they are, humanity has mere weeks before the most important event in its history, and NASA is still hoping we don't notice. So, here's where we stand. Atlas is approaching Earth, demonstrating clear artificial capabilities. China and multiple international space agencies have sounded the alarm. NASA remains silent. We have roughly 1 month before Atlas reaches its destination. The question is no longer whether Atlas is artificial. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what happens when it arrives and whether we're ready. We should be preparing communication strategies. What do we want to say if Atlas attempts direct contact? How should we respond to an intelligence vastly more advanced than our own? Who speaks for humanity? And what message do we want to convey? We should be coordinating a unified international response. This isn't an American or Chinese issue. It's a human issue. Whatever happens when Atlas arrives will affect every person on Earth equally. We need cooperation, not competition. And above all, We should be honest with the global population. People deserve to know what's approaching and what we understand about it. The alternative is billions being blindsided by first contact because their governments decided they couldn't handle the truth. China chose transparency. NASA chose secrecy. In 4 to 6 weeks, we'll find out which choice was right. But that discovery will happen whether NASA acknowledges reality or not. Atlas is coming. The countdown continues. China has warned us. NASA remains silent. And humanity is about to face something we are desperately unprepared for. Not because we lacked warning, but because those who should have prepared us chose not to. What do you think NASA's silence really means? Are they protecting us or protecting themselves? And what will Atlas do when that countdown finally reaches 0? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed because in 4 to 6 weeks, we'll all find out together whether China's warning was vindicated or overblown.